A reading from Esther 7, verses 1 through 9. So the king and Haman went in to feast with Queen Esther. On the second day, as they were drinking wine, the king again said to Esther, "What is your petition, Queen Esther? It shall be granted you. And what is your request? Even to half my kingdom it shall be fulfilled." Then Queen Esther answered, "If I have won your favor, O king, and if it pleases the king, let my life be given me, that is my petition, and the lives of my people, that is my request. For we have been sold, I and my people, to be destroyed, to be killed, and to be annihilated. If we had been sold merely as slaves, men and women, I would have held my peace, but no enemy can compensate for this damage to the king." Then King Ahasuerus said to Queen Esther, "Who is he and where is he who has presumed to do this?" Esther said, "A foe and an enemy, this wicked Haman." Then Haman was terrified before the king and queen. The king rose from the feast in wrath and went into the palace garden. But Haman stayed to beg his life from Queen Esther, for he saw that the king had determined to destroy him. When the king returned from the palace garden to the banquet hall, Haman had thrown himself on the couch where Esther was reclining, and the king said, "Will he even violate the queen in my presence, in my own house?" As the words left the mouth of the king, they covered Haman's face. Then Harbona, one of the eunuchs in attendance on the king, said, "Look, the very pole that Haman has prepared for Mordecai, whose word saved the king, stands at Haman's house, 50 cubits high." And the king said, "Hang him on that."
That is the climax of a story. That's the end of a story, right? That's not how stories work. You didn't know any of those people and what happened and why they were sitting together at dinner because we started at the end. So, once upon a time, the king of Persia threw a banquet. And when the king of Persia throws a banquet is thrown. It lasted 14 days. The first week was just the king and his governors, and the second week was the king and his governors and his counselors and his generals and the leaders of the court, and the women were partying with the queen, and the whole town was partying in the town square, and there was a week of that. And at the end of those 14 days of bacchanal partying in Persia, the king wants to show off the queen and summons the queen from the women's party, which was separate from the men's party, and summons the queen to the men's side of the party, and she says no. She refuses the summons. And of course, we can't have women saying no when they are summoned by their men. So the king has to do something about this. Advised by his counselors and his generals and the men that were at his party, whose wives had just all witnessed the queen say no to the king, their husband said, "Let's not give them any ideas. You need to make an example out of your queen." And so the king dismisses the queen. He says, we're done. There's no mention of divorce. There's no mention of execution or arrest. She disappears from the story. "You are no longer my queen. I'm done with you." A few days later, a little less angry and a little less drunk, the king says, "I got to have a queen. We have to have a new queen. It's time now." And so, like Cinderella, like the call goes out to all of the eligible maidens in the city, in the kingdom, are presented to the king. We're all old enough to understand what's happening here, right? This is a beauty contest, and this is a sexual contest. The maidens were brought before the king to try out. This includes a young woman named Esther. Esther is third generation exile. Her great-grandparents were a part of the Babylonian exile when King Nebuchadnezzar came into Judah and Jerusalem and took all of the elites and put them. She is a descendant of that exile. She is in the care of her eldest cousin Mordecai. And they have kept their roots as Judeans secret from everyone. So they do not know, the king does not know that Esther is from Judah and an exile from Judea. Esther is presented, she waits her turn, she gets her turn, and she wins whatever contest this is. And the king of Persia, probably Xerxes, by the way, you know that name, names Esther queen of Persia. From western India to the Red Sea, to the Arabian Peninsula, she is queen, and he does not know that he has just named an exile from Judea as queen of all the lands. Now, while she was waiting her turn to be presented before the king, Mordecai is out in the courtyard waiting, and Mordecai hears two guards who are loyal to the first queen plotting to assassinate the king. And of course, when Esther gets selected as queen and comes out to tell Mordecai, Mordecai tells Esther, and not only did she win this beauty contest and the king is absolutely smitten head over heels for Esther, Mordecai and Esther have also sniffed out an assassination plot against the king and saved his life. And then one of our other main characters is introduced, and the king has promoted this guy Haman as his number one guy, his number one lieutenant. And Haman loves every minute of that. And so Haman puts on all of his stuff, as much royal stuff as he can, and goes to parade his new position around everyone in town and the whole city, and everybody is bowing down to Haman, and he notices that Mordecai does not take the knee. He knows that the king's right-hand man can't just kill a guy in the street because he didn't bow. And so he does his research, and he finds out who Mordecai is. He finds out Mordecai is from Judea and who his people are, and goes to the king with a plan. Because, of course, self-important people, when they are targeted and when they are not respected the way that they think they do, it's not just Mordecai, it's Mordecai and all of his people that are targeted. Haman goes to the king with a plan and doesn't name the people as descendants of Judah, but says, there is a people within our kingdom that refuses to bend the knee to you, that refuses to swear fealty to you. Now, if you give me the authority, this is a bribe, if you give me the authority to go after this people who refuses to accept, then I'll get 10,000 talents into the king. That's like, I'll put $1 million into the treasury for the king's spending. He bribes the king, and the king says, well, we can't have an entire ethnicity, an entire nationality not bowing down and accepting, and the king acquiesces. As word goes out, Mordecai is doing his city tour again, and everybody is bowing again. Haman is parading around town again, and everybody is bowing to Haman again and again. Mordecai does not bend the knee to Haman. So Haman says, that's enough. People have seen this guy now. They know who he is. Even though we're doing this whole thing for the descendants of Judah, I'm going after Mordecai. Start building gallows in my courtyard in front of my house. And tomorrow morning at dawn, we will hang Mordecai from those gallows. So Queen Esther and Mordecai get together. And Mordecai has to now convince Queen Esther that she is in a position to do something about the king's authority given to Haman to wipe out the Judeans from Persia. And she does not want to. She's not looking to take up anything. She's not looking for a cause. She's not looking for a purpose or a fight. She's new queen. She's enjoying being queen. I mean, she's queen, right? She's not looking for this. And Mordecai says a few things. Mordecai says, they're going after the descendants of Judea. That's you. So eventually, they're going to find out, and you will be executed as well. Mordecai also says, you know what? There's no mention of God in the book of Esther, by the way, but Mordecai says, we'll probably be saved. This kind of like reference to God's providence without saying it. Something will probably happen. God's a deliverer. God, we know, so we'll probably be saved. But if you don't do it, then you will be known as the Judean queen who turned their back on her people. And he says, you may be in this position for just such a time as this. And she says, another reason she doesn't want to take this on is because you can't request anything of the king without being summoned by the king first. Remember that this whole story starts with somebody screwing up the rules about being summoned by the king. And it is depending on the king's mood that day. If she goes to the king's office while he's doing business and says we need to talk, he can behead her there and then. So she gets all roiled out, and she puts on her hottest dress and all of her makeup and all of her crowns and everything she's wearing her best outfit, and goes to the antechamber, the courtyard in front of the king's throne room where he's hearing petitions and doing king stuff in his office, and he can't ignore her. So she catches his eye, and she is so decked out that he says he remembers why he loved her in the first place. He chose her in the first place and said, all right, you're not on the schedule, but I'll take it. And then he says, so anything you want, you have pleased me so much, and what is your request today? Why are you here? And she says, I want to put on a dinner. I want to put on a dinner party, and I just want it to be you and me and Haman at this dinner party. So he says, of course, we'll be there. We'll be there tonight. We'll see you. And they have this dinner party. And at this dinner party, it says the next night. So this was an all-night thing. And the next night, he says, so what is your request? This feast couldn't be the actual, what do you want? Anything you want, let's do it. And Esther says, I want to do this, you, me, and Haman tomorrow night. Fine, whatever. We'll do that tomorrow night. So in between these two banquets, the day after, the king is in his office and says, whatever happened to that guy who found the assassins and stopped and saved my life? What did he get? And the clerk's like, well, he's on the rolls, but we have it recorded, but nobody ever did anything to Mordecai. And the king says, well, we should do something for Mordecai. We should have a Mordecai day and give him king for a day privileges or whatever. And so they put crowns on Mordecai, and they put scepters and rings on him and robes and everything. And and the king says, of course, my number one lieutenant should be the one to lead the day of honor for Mordecai. So Haman, to whom Mordecai has refused to bow twice, and for whom Haman is currently having gallows built, Haman has to dress Mordecai in royal robes and give him rings and give him king for a day treatment and kneel before him and thank him for saving the king's life. And then we get our scripture this morning. The second dinner, the second banquet, it's just Esther and her, they all had staff. So it's just Esther and the king and Haman. And the king wants to get to it. All right, this is the second dinner. I know that the dinner is not the thing. What do you want, Esther? And she says, my people are in danger. I am in danger. We have been sold, bringing up the bribe that the king took from Haman. And says, this people that you're going after are mine. And of course, the king is pissed. Who dares go after the queen and her people right under my nose? It was him, right? There's this moment at the table. A foe and an enemy. This man, Haman. So the king storms out in anger, and Haman throws himself on his knees on the couch where Esther is reclining. And maybe if I'm a writer and I'm writing this story, maybe as a way to get out of accepting the bribe in the first place, the king catches Haman assaulting the queen, right? He walks back in. Haman is on his knees in front of Esther on the couch where she is reclining, and he says, look, Haman is after the queen in my own house. Well, of course I have to execute him now. So he's executed for assaulting the queen, so that taking $1 million for the king's treasury is kind of erased from the story. And then the eunuch speaks up. The gender non-binary eunuch speaks up and says, you guys remember those gallows that we just built for Mordecai? They're right outside. Like, if you're gonna, they're ready to go. And Haman is hung from the gallows that he built to hang Mordecai from. And as long as Queen Esther is queen in Persia, the people of Judah are safe in the land. For such a time as this. Our story is full of people who are given one perfect chance. Their story in our story is one perfect chance to do something great, to do the right thing. Our story is full of them. There's so many examples. Jael. Jael is obviously from Krypton, because Superman's name is Kal, and her name is Jael. But Jael, she's the hero of the Battle of Mount Tabor. the king of the city of Hazor in Canaan that the Israelites were going up against. The army is decimated. The Israelites are winning, have won, and the king is escaping, trying to escape. And he passes Jael's tent, and Jael says, "Come in. You can hide with me." And he goes in, and she drives a tent spike through his head. We know Ruth and Naomi and Boaz arrange a marriage between the three of them, mother-in-law, daughter-in-law, and Boaz, to preserve the name of their Israelite and Judean ancestry that will eventually then lead us to Jesus. Back in Genesis, Tamar married two of Judah's sons, and they both died before childbirth. So she was dismissed by her father-in-law. Go back to your land, go back to your people. So she decides to disguise herself as a prostitute. And Judah, ancestor of all Israelites, patriarch, goes to arrange a little business with these prostitutes and says, let's go. And Jael, disguised as a prostitute, says, "No, I'm not gonna do that. I don't want your goats. I don't want anything like that. I want your promise that you're gonna pay me for this." And she gets the signet ring. She gets the mark of Judah as a promise, and uses Judah, and gets pregnant by Judah. And then Judah is going to have her executed because she was found to be pregnant. But it was neither of his sons, right? They were both dead. And she had brought shame and disgust to his family, even though he was the one who went to the prostitute in the first place. And he says before the execution, where's the father? Where is this baby coming from, so we can punish him too for the shame that he has brought to my family? And she says, "I got his ring right here, and it's his." Prostitute Rahab sheltered Joshua's spies in Jericho. You remember Joshua pit the battle of Jericho with the trumpets that knocked down the walls, right? Our story is full of people who have found themselves placed for a purpose, whether they were looking for it or not. And biblical womanhood has always been doing what is necessary for survival. Protecting yourself and your family and your people by any means at your disposal, and typically through the sexual appetites of the men in the story. And all four of those women, if you turn to the first chapter of the Gospel of Matthew, all four of those women are in the genealogical record that leads us to the birth of Jesus Christ. Esther's story is one of purpose, of found purpose, whether she was looking for it or not. This story was for people living in Judea during the exile, to tell them that you can still do good stuff. You can still accomplish the Lord's purposes, even in exile, even in Babylon. We need purpose. We've been talking about living well through the wisdom literature of the Hebrew Bible, living a good life, having a good name, a good mind, and a good people, and we need a good cause. And you can Google this, of course. You can Google everything. You Google finding purpose, and you can find 7 ways of finding your life's purpose. And you can find 15 key questions to ask when finding your life's purpose. And you can find 3 easy steps to finding the meaning of life. You know what the meaning of life is, by the way, right? Say it, Kirk. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. One of the things they do in this story is they find the ultimate supercomputer in the world called Deep Thought, who also happens to be depressed, which is awesome. And they ask him, what is the meaning of life? They're asking this supercomputer, Deep Thought, why are we here? What is our purpose? And the computer spits out the answer to the great question of life, the universe, and everything is 42. By the way, there's a theory that in coding language, 42 is an asterisk, and it means it's a placeholder that means anything you want. So there's a theory that the supercomputer Deep Thought is saying the answer to the meaning of life is anything you want it to be. So what is a Christian person's purpose? You get online and you would think it is yelling at other people about how they read the Bible and what they believe and how they approach faith. You get online and you would think that the purpose of a Christian person is to defend Christianity, defend Orthodox Christianity, a particular sect, a particular translation and interpretation of Orthodox Christianity. Whomever's particular understanding of that is speaking in the video. Their purpose of their faith is to defend it, not to live it, not to do anything with it. Our purpose as Christians is to follow Jesus Christ. That means listening to what he said. That means doing what he did. And that means going where he led. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who was a theologian in Austria and Germany, who was taken from us in a concentration camp under Nazi Germany, says, you are on this earth. The place God calls you, your vocation is the word that he used. The place God called you to is the place where your deepest gladness and the world's hunger meet. You have been given the thing that brings you deep gladness for a purpose, and wherever that and the world's deepest needs come together, that is purpose. Amen.